Welcome to the deep dive. We've got quite a bit of data here in front of us.
Yes, this is from Global Market Pulse, powered by Cognitive Market Research.
We're going to unpack something that, well, it sounds maybe a bit niche, the nickel-iron target market.
It absolutely sounds like really deep industrial stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But looking through the source material, it's clear it's far from obscure. It's actually kind of a basic building block for many high-tech sectors.
Right, exactly. If you think about, the devices we use, advanced manufacturing, a lot of it relies on these incredibly thin layers of material.
Film deposition, yeah.
And that's exactly where these nickel-iron targets fit in.
Right. So essentially, what are they? They're specialized blocks made of nickel and iron alloys.
Okay.
And when you subject them to certain processes, like sputtering,
Sputtering, okay.
they release atoms. Those atoms then get deposited onto a substrate, like a wafer or glass.
Creating those really precise, thin films.
Exactly, the kind you need for, say, magnetic storage in hard drives or advanced sensors,
Right.
certain semiconductors, specialized coatings for optics, that sort of thing. Protective layers, too.
Okay, so it's literally the source material for layering advanced tech, almost atom by atom.
Pretty close, yeah. It's fundamental stuff.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to dig into the numbers in this data, see what they tell us about the global picture, where this market is actually heading.
Let's jump right in then. Top line figures first.
Yeah, let's do it. Global market in 2021.
Okay, according to the report, it was already valued at $1,546.67 million.
Wow, okay, over $1.5 billion?
Yep.
For something so, specific sounding.
Yeah.
That scale's surprising right away.
It is. And the report projects a pretty solid near-term jump, too, to $2,098 million by 2025.
Right.
But the real story, the thing that really caught my eye in this data, is the longer-term forecast.
And what's that looking like?
By 2033, the projection is for the global market to hit $3,860.3 million.
Wait, merely tripling from that 2021 number?
That's right.
That kind of growth.
You're saying
I mean, for a foundational component market like this, it suggests something pretty major is happening downstream, right, in those
Yeah.
tech industries you mentioned.
Absolutely. It points to really strong, sustained demand. The data gives a compound annual growth rate, the CAGR.
Right, the average yearly growth.
Yeah, it smooths out the bumps,
Right.
and it's projected at a robust 7.92%.
7.92%. Okay, so that confirms it's not just some quick spike.
No, it's just consistent momentum year after year for over a decade.
A steady climb. Okay, let's unpack where this growth is happening,
Yeah.
because the data breaks it down regionally,
Yeah,
right?
it does. Quite detailed. Starting in North America.
Yeah, let's start there.
Okay, the report shows a market size of $411.41 million back in 2021.
Okay.
That's projected to hit $541.28 million in 2025, and then climb all the way to $961.21 million by 2033. Almost double the 2021 value.
And looking within North America, the U.S. is, well, it's clearly the dominant player here.
Oh, definitely. The figures show it going from $313.75 million in 2021 to over $724 million by 2033.
That's a huge chunk of the North American total.
It is, but Canada also shows promising growth, projected to more than double.
From what to what?
From about $55 million in 2021 to nearly $135 million in 2033.
Okay, and Mexico.
Mexico is also forecast for healthy expansion, expected to reach over $100 million by 2033.
So pretty strong, broad adoption across the whole continent.
Seems that way, yeah.
All right, let's hop across the Atlantic to Europe. What's the picture there?
Also, significant expansion projected. The market there is expected to grow from $340.27 million in 2021 to over $814 million by 2033.
Again, more than doubling.
Yeah.
And who's leading the pack in Europe?
Germany is highlighted, forecast to hit almost $173 million by 20.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Germany is highlighted, forecast to hit almost $173 million by 2033.
Okay.
But, the growth isn't just confined to Germany. The UK, France, Italy, Russia, Spain, they're all contributing.
How much are we talking there?
Each showing steady growth into the double-digit million-dollar range by 2033.
And there was something interesting about the rest of Europe category, too.
Yeah, that caught my eye. It shows really remarkable expansion, projected to grow from around $60 million in 2021 to nearly $168 million by 2033.
Wow, so it's spreading beyond just the traditional big manufacturing country.
Exactly. Suggests wider uptake.
Okay, now, Asia Pacific. The report seemed pretty emphatic about this region.
It did. It literally says this is where the real acceleration is happening.
And the numbers back that up.
Oh, yeah. The compound annual growth rate, the CAGR, is notably higher here. It's 8.57%.
Higher than the global average you mentioned.
Right. And that translates into some, well, pretty massive numbers.
What's the totals?
The regional market is set to leap from $561.44 million in 2021.
Okay, already the biggest region in 2021.
Yep, and it's forecast to hit a staggering $1,478.49 million by 2033.
Whoa! Almost 3 times its 2021 size. That's huge.
It really is. And China is a major driver of this.
What are the figures for China?
Jumping from about $213 million in 2021 to a forecasted $584 million by 2033.
Incredible. And India?
India's on a similarly steep trajectory, projected to reach over $270 million by 2033.
So those two giants are really powering a lot of that growth.
A huge amount. But Japan, South Korea, and the various Southeast Asian markets are also showing consistent upward trends in the data. It's broad-based.
Yep.
And the report also specifically calls out Taiwan, Singapore, and Australia.
What about them?
Their collective contribution is projected to top $100 million by 2033.
So it really underscores the widespread nature of this demand across lots of different Asian economies.
Diverse tech hubs needing these materials.
Okay, let's move down the map. South America.
We see growth there, too, from about $94 million in 2021 up to nearly $278 million projected for 2033.
And who's leading in South America?
Brazil is leading the charge, according to the data. It's projected to nearly triple, hitting almost $98 million by 2033.
Okay.
And then Argentina, Colombia, Peru are also following that upward trend.
Got it. What about the Middle East?
Also expanding, based on this analysis.
The numbers.
Expected to reach about $166 million by 2033, up from roughly $74 million in 2021.
Any specific countries highlighted?
Yeah, the report mentions significant contributions from Saudi Arabia and the UAE.
Makes sense.
And also points to noticeable growth coming from Egypt, Turkey, and Qatar.
Okay. And last but not least, Africa.
Africa's covered, too. Shows growth from just under $65 million in 2021 to about $162 million projected by 2033.
And the main players there?
The most prominent markets identified are South Africa forecast at around $67 million by 2033, and Nigeria projected to reach almost $41 million.
Okay. So if we just sort of step back and pull all these regional pieces together.
Yeah.
North America, Europe, especially that huge acceleration in Asia Pacific, but also solid growth in South America, right. Middle East, Africa. What's the big picture message here?
Well, it directly reflects that increasing global demand we talked about at the start. Demand for high-performance materials for these thin film technologies. It's not theoretical. The money follows the need.
And the report explicitly links, it gives you, the listener, incredible insight into like the engine room of modern global industry and technology.
Yeah, it shows you what's needed at that very ground level to actually build the complex devices and systems we all rely on.
It really does.
Which, raises an interesting point to maybe leave people thinking about.
Okay. Based only on the implications we can draw from this data we've discussed.
Right.
Given how critical this expanding nickel-iron target market clearly is to so many advanced technologies across such diverse global regions, what does this comprehensive worldwide growth really tell us about the interconnectedness and maybe the increasing dependency of technological advancement everywhere on these specialized material supply chains?
Welcome to the deep dive. So today we're jumping into a session crafted just for you, pulling directly from the source material you gave us on the nickel-iron target market.
That's right.
Our mission really is to unpack it, understand the drivers, the restraints, and where it's all heading. We want to pull out those key insights for you.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Okay.
It's quite a specific but crucial area. Your source is really laid out. We're talking about nickel-iron alloys, specifically in target forms.
Targets, meaning for deposition.
Exactly, for creating these incredibly thin films. And these films are, well, they're fundamental for a lot of advanced electronics, data storage, really cutting-edge stuff.
Like building blocks, but on a tiny scale.
Precisely. Deposited with very high precision.
Okay, so definitely high-tech. What are the main things pushing this market forward, then? According to your sources, what's really driving the growth?
Well, one of the biggest drivers mentioned, and it's not too surprising, is the demand from semiconductors and consumer electronics. Just relentless.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Demand from semiconductors and consumer electronics, just relentless demand. Yeah. Think about components for things like OLED screens or critical steps in making chips, advanced sensors. They all need these high-purity materials. The demand there is huge.
And I noticed in the material you provided, it wasn't just those areas. Renewables came up, too.
Absolutely. That's another key driver. The whole expansion in renewable energy tech, specifically things like solar panels, photovoltaic devices. They use these thin films as well. Plus, there's the whole trend of miniaturization across manufacturing.
Getting smaller and smaller.
Right. MEMS, microelectronics. They need increasingly precise material targets to make that happen.
Okay. And nickel iron. It has specific magnetic properties, doesn't it? So storage must be part of this picture.
A very important part. The sources definitely note the ongoing need in magnetic storage. Your classic hard disk drives, yes, but also newer magnetic memory components. They really rely on those unique magnetic qualities of nickel iron.
So quite a few strong forces pulling demand upwards, but, there are always challenges. What's holding things back? What are the main restraints your sources identified?
Yeah, it's interesting. Despite all that demand, there are some significant hurdles. Number one is probably the high production and processing costs.
The cost factor.
It's just inherently expensive to get the ultra-high purity needed, and the alloying process itself is complex.
So that level of material perfection, it doesn't come cheap.
It really doesn't. And then you've got the risk around raw materials. The market's quite sensitive to, nickel and iron availability, price swings.
Supply chain vulnerability.
Exactly. It introduces volatility. And the sources also flag stricter environmental regulations, especially around mining and smelting. That adds layers of complexity and, cost again.
And I guess there's always competition from other materials.
There is. The sources mention alternatives, things like cobalt or maybe even pure nickel sputtering targets, depending on the exact need. So nickel iron constantly has to prove its specific advantages for a given application.
Okay, so we have the pushes and the pulls. How's the market actually adapting? What are the key trends shaping where it's going based on what you saw in the sources?
This is where the innovation really comes in. Yeah. A major trend is much more customization of the target materials.
Tailoring the alloys.
Precisely. Tailoring them with specific properties for really next-gen uses. Think aerospace, advanced automotive stuff, very specialized electronics. The demands are getting incredibly specific.
That makes sense. As the tech gets more specialized, the materials have to evolve too. What else stood out?
Well, the method used matters too. Magnetron sputtering is becoming like the go-to technique for depositing these films. That directly influences how targets are developed and the kind of demand we see.
Okay.
And on the manufacturing floor itself, your sources highlight more automation, more AI being integrated.
Using tech to affine the process itself.
Exactly. Trying to boost consistency, cut down waste, and, hopefully tackle some of those high costs we talked about earlier.
Right.
And one last big one, sustainability. There's a real push now focusing on the circular economy, trying to reclaim and recycle used sputtering targets, reduce that environmental footprint and the reliance on new raw materials.
So, if we pull it all together, it's a market being driven by really advanced tech, like electronics and clean energy, but it's grappling with these fundamental issues: high cost, tricky supply chains, environmental rules. And at the same time, it's innovating hard with custom materials, smarter manufacturing, and this focus on recycling. It's quite a dynamic picture drawn straight from the sources you provided.
It really is. A complex interplay, you could say.
Delivered right from your source material. So maybe here's something to think about as you digest all this. You've got this booming demand from cutting-edge tech on one side, and on the other, increasing pressure about supply chains and the environment. How well can innovation in the materials, the manufacturing, the recycling realistically balance those competing forces in this nickel-iron target market going forward? It feels like a really delicate balance to keep an eye on.
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.